Hey, it's Emily, aka Orbalology, and today I'll be answering your questions in another Q&A special video. My last Q&A video was when I hit 5,000 subscribers, so I thought it was time to do another one for my 30K subscriber special. And again, I want to thank everyone who submitted questions, and I hope you have fun hearing my answers. Because I received so many questions, both on this channel's community page as well as on Twitter, I unfortunately won't be able to get through all of them today. But if you guys really enjoyed this, I can maybe do the rest of them and maybe a few more in a part 2. So let me know if that's something you're interested in. This channel has meant a lot to me, and I think I mentioned this in an earlier Q&A video, but I started this channel not only to connect with others who share a similar passion for video games, collecting, and all the above, but also to help improve my presentation skills, which I think have grown immensely since. So again, I would like to thank everyone for their support and just coming along on this journey with me. All right, so I'm gonna start off with this question from Steve Solomon 6109, and they write, my questions: if you could star in your own original video game, what genres would your game be? Also, what would be the objective of your game? So I've actually answered a similar question to this a while back, I want to say on a podcast. So I'm gonna add to the answer and make it a little bit more specific. And I think I would like to star in a strategy RPG, specifically a Sky Pirates strategy RPG. I think would be fun. So I think combat-wise, it would be cool if that was more of a grid-based, turn-based system, where everyone has their different battleships and configurations to move around the map or the sky. I think would be really neat, and maybe different weather conditions that kind of change the map around. And also similar to Fire Emblem, after you're finished the battle sequences, it would let you kind of roam around your ship and interact with the different characters, and I think that would be kind of an interesting twist on the genre. Now, when it comes to objectives, I don't want to sound too cliche, but I think what I would want is for my character to be maybe more morally gray, and they're just kind of fighting in these sky battles in order to survive, and kind of lifting stuff from maybe Xenoblade and even Fire Emblem, some of the Fire Emblem games. Maybe they're having to war against these sentient beings or some sort of robots that are being controlled by some higher power, and that's what's making the conditions in the sky so harsh, and along with the different weather patterns or something. So maybe through their journey, they're trying to find some sort of maybe ancient artifact or lost technology in order to resolve this problem and kind of see a more peaceful sky come out of it. So that's kind of my idea for a cool JRPG video game that I would like to star in. So the next question is from Elliot Wilderman. Do you find it hard to balance work life and your personal life and your game life? So the short answer is yes. When it comes to my job, right now I am a postdoc, so it's not necessarily a 9-to-5 job all the time. I try to make that the case as much as possible, but there are times when there are deadlines and I have to just get the work done off hours. So recently that's been taking up a lot of my time to make YouTube videos. So when it comes to making time for video games, in between content creation as well as my actual day job, it's of course difficult as well, especially because I have to balance a lot of other hobbies that I enjoy doing, like reading, watching Asian dramas. I also like to go hiking and do some other outdoor activities, so it's very difficult to balance at times, as well as of course making time for friends and family, because it's important to maintain those relationships and build upon them. So it is difficult. You may have noticed I haven't been making as many YouTube videos as I did when I first started, because I think a good strategy for starting YouTube is just to put a lot of quantity out there, just to really practice and figure out what direction you want your channel to go in. So these last few months I've been really trying to achieve a better balance of everything and be more deliberate in what sort of videos I am making. And I think that's been somewhat working for me. I'm hoping to, of course, stick to at least one video a week still, but I think putting out a good video versus a rushed video is probably the way to go. Sorry, that went a little off topic, but I think someone else asked a question similar to that. So Alan Skavov 8405 asked, have you ever dreamed of acting? And if so, what specifically would you want to be acting in? Live action Robin from One Piece, maybe? To be honest, the idea of acting terrifies me. I acted in a few different plays when I was younger, but none of them had major lines because I'm just not very good at memorizing and being able to deliver lines in a smooth way. And I think this is something that I could probably work on, but I still would be very lacking. Robin from One Piece is a great character, and it would be an honor to act as her. I just don't think I would do her justice, if I'm being honest. But I'm really excited to see who they end up casting for her, and I'm just seeing how that translates in a live action setting for her character, because again, she's my favorite from One Piece, and I'm really excited for season 2. And the other question they asked is, what is the first game that truly gave you that spark for collecting? So this is a little difficult to answer, mostly because I've always been a collector. I've collected various things over the years. Like when I was a child, I had a rock collection. I collected Beanie Babies. I was obsessed with 101 Dalmatians, so I had a lot of plushies and various toys from that franchise. And when I got a little bit older, I started collecting K-pop and some books. And then obviously video games and figures. But when it comes to video games, I wasn't actively collecting for video games when I was younger. And this is mostly because my brother and I, we shared a collection, and we actually didn't have very many games between us. And the only way to experience more games was to kind of sell the games we had. So I think a lot of people could relate to this. That's just how it worked back then, unless your parents kind of spoiled you, which I think our parents did a very good job at not totally spoiling us. We are limited to just a couple systems. So between us, we had the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, PS2, and then eventually an Xbox 360, which kind of had a short shelf life for us. And then my brother also had a Nintendo DS. So I think compared to some kids back then, we didn't have a ton of consoles. I think we had a good amount, don't get me wrong, but we didn't have everything, like you hear some people say was their childhood. And we also ended up renting a lot of games too, and I remember also borrowing some games from the library, especially during the 360 era. That's how I mostly experienced games on there, was borrowing from the library. That's how I experienced most of Final Fantasy 13, though I did kind of not renew it after certain points when I was, I think, 30 hours down the same corridor and I was getting a little bored. And my brother also kind of hogged the 360, so I actually didn't have that much time on it. And I'm really busy with my AP classes in high school, I think, when we eventually got that system. So I was mostly just watching him play Halo, Metal Gear Solid, Gears of War, and Assassin's Creed and all those games, more than actually playing myself. But then when I was an adult, making a little bit of money as a grad student by being a TA, I did end up getting the Nintendo 3DS XL for A Link Between Worlds, and that kind of started up my game collecting journey. Again, I wasn't making a ton of money as a grad student. I was more focused on building up my emergency fund, and just had a little bit left over to kind of dive into some hobbies. But it wasn't until 2020, after I graduated with my PhD, getting some money from consulting, and then eventually a postdoc, that I was able to fund my collecting hobbies a bit better. But yeah, it was definitely A Link Between Worlds that I could credit for sparking my interest in game collecting. All right, so the next question is a name I'm probably going to butcher, so apologies, is Jenna Xu. And their question is, how much do you prefer to see about a game before going in? If there's something you're excited to see, are you the type to watch all the trailers, or do you try to see as little as possible before playing? And were there any games that really impressed you going in blind, or any that you were excited for or thought you enjoy only to end up not liking that much? So concerning trailers and everything, I actually don't go out of my way to watch a lot of trailers. I might see one or two, but I don't usually tend to see all of them, even for games I'm super hyped about, because usually I'm really hyped maybe from the one trailer or two, and if I'm already sold to buy the game, I'll just probably experience it then. Kind of the same with demos. I don't usually play a ton of demos unless it's a game I'm kind of on the fence about. But if it's a game that I know I'm going to be buying day one, I most likely won't play the demo unless there's some sort of carryover or reward that you can only get in the demo. So I can't really think of any games that I went in blind, because I usually have some sort of knowledge about a game before I buy it, either through research, maybe watching some reviews and a little bit of gameplay footage. If it was a game featured on a Nintendo Direct, I'll have seen the trailer on there, because I usually do try to watch those, and whenever Sony does a state of play. And most of the games I just automatically buy day one without going necessarily too deep in the weeds of reviews or trailers or whatnot, or just franchises I've played before. So I guess in a way, Fire Emblem Engage was a bit going in blind. other than just seeing the Nintendo Direct trailer, as well as, I guess, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, though they did it kind of their own direct, so that was a lot of information that I kind of knew beforehand. So yeah, I really can't think of any games that I went in completely blind, not knowing anything, and games that I thought I would enjoy but end up not enjoying. I'm trying to think of what games I was really disappointed in. I think the last game I was most disappointed in was maybe Triangle Strategy. Like, don't get me wrong, it's a good game. I was just really hoping that the decisions the characters would make would really alter kind of the story. In a way, it definitely does, but I always just felt like your decision was kind of inconsequential to the outcome. There would always be some workaround or something the story kind of just progresses and goes with it. Your decisions did matter if you wanted to go on the golden route or a different route in particular, but I didn't really feel inspired to maybe go through the trouble of doing all that. And I guess another recent one that I was a little bit disappointed in last year was Final Fantasy 16. Most of the game I really enjoyed and was very engrossed in the story and just wanting to know what happened. But it kind of fell off a little bit for me at the end. I kind of wished it went in a different direction or had more of an epic conclusion that I was kind of hoping for, but I guess in retrospect I understand why they didn't do that. And the game did feel long in the tooth, especially towards the end, so I was getting a little bit fatigued while kind of powering through it. But yeah, I would say with those two are my most recent games that I thought I would really enjoy, but was a little bit disappointed in. So the next question is from Zunando, and they ask, what was your most wished JRPG figure or figures? So to start with, I think there's a major lack of male JRPG figures in the figure market. So I'd love to see more of those, particularly from my favorite franchises. So for example, I think there definitely should be a Noah scale figure to go alongside Mio. I think it's super disappointing that we don't have any male figures in the Xenoblade line. I think it'll be great to also get Shulk as well. And when it comes to the Trails figure lines, I'm surprised we haven't had a Lloyd announcement yet, though I feel like he's the obvious next male one. Though I will say that I am happy that there is male representation from the Kotobukiya line for Trails, particularly with Reen, Crow, and we also have a Joshua on the way. So I think it also makes sense to include Lloyd in this lineup. Maybe Graham, I think would be awesome. As well as Brise. Honestly, I would just love to have all the Trails characters have figures, but that would be way too expensive and just impossible to store. But when it comes to other female figures for the Trails line, I would love to see Laura in particular get a figure. She was the one that I romanced in Cold Steel games. But honestly, I'd be excited for anyone that they announce. And I really hope that Kotobukiya kind of continues with their rollout of various figures. When it comes to Fire Emblem, I definitely want a Celica from Echoes. Get a skill figure. It's probably not going to happen at this point, but it'd be awesome if it did. It'd also be cool to have Chrom or Lucina from Awakening as well. But those are, of course, the obvious JRPG picks I would do because those are the 3 major series that I collect figures for. Otherwise, I think it would be cool to have a Link skill figure. He has so many Nendoroids and Figmas, and I don't really like collecting Figmas. I haven't gone down that rabbit hole yet, but I think a nice skill figure is a must. I don't know why it hasn't happened yet. All right, so the next question comes from Tuktukla. Apologies if I butchered that as well. What has been the most enjoyable, enlightening topic to cover for you personally? Longtime viewers of the channel may know what I'm about to say, but definitely the Switch cart revisions kind of videos that I did, where I kind of shared how I learned that a lot of the Switch carts that you get from especially Nintendo published games actually get revised when they get reprinted. So if you flip over your game cart for Nintendo published games, you'll notice that there is a string of zeros as well as a number on the back of the game cart. And if that number happens to be higher than 1, that means you own a revised Switch cart. So this will include additional patches and any revisions that the game saw since it launched. And so the higher the number, the more revisions that game went through. So for example, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 here, the revised cart that I currently own ends in a 6. So it's been through 5 different revisions since the first one launched. And I think shortly after releasing those videos, the 3DS eShop was closing, and so that kind of just cemented that I really shouldn't go the digital route for any of these games or rely on an internet connection to download the latest patches, and really try to get as many games in my collection as possible that are mostly there that you could play offline. and kind of give you true ownership of those games. So kind of after this so-called enlightenment period, I'm hoping to tailor more of my content more towards that direction, because I think it's an important thing that is unfortunately very neglected on the collecting side of YouTube. Because I think this is an important topic that we're slowly seeing to realize in other forms of media, including various subscriptions and streaming services, where we're really not owning a lot of the things we're paying for. So my goal for this channel is to definitely create more content in that sort of framework and just emphasize the importance of physical ownership. All right, so the next question is from Sanji the Chef. What is one childhood game you are either looking to buy for your collection or hope one day to see remastered or re-released? So I'm going to go off this from games I don't already own in my collection, because there have been quite a few remasters or just games I have come to own within the past year or so that were childhood favorites. Another childhood favorite I don't think I've talked about a lot on the channel is Dark Cloud, and I would love to see Level 5 revisit that series. And I know that I think it's available on PSN right now digitally on the PS4, both the first game and the second game. But it'll be nice to see that come out physically in some way. And maybe instead of a remaster, it'd be cool to see Level 5 bring a third game out. But they're so busy with other IPs that I kind of doubt Dark Cloud is even on their minds right now, unfortunately. And also on the PS2, I loved the Jak and Daxter games. Unfortunately, I think Naughty Dog is kind of done with that series. I know Jak 4 was a thing for a little bit that they canceled, and the devs that created the previous 3 games and the racing game, I think have since left. I don't really see a revival of that game ever happening, but I'd love to see a collection of the games come to the PS5, maybe. Even has to be through limited run games again. I missed out on the PS4 editions they did, but if they were to bring back those nice collector's editions, maybe even with different items on the PS5, I would definitely be buying them. All right, so the next question is from Danny L. Pizentes, 5455. And they had 2 questions. Which is your favorite system to collect games for? And whenever there's rumors of a new console, do you keep buying games for the current ones available? Going by quantity, I think the Nintendo Switch is my favorite console to collect for, because I have quite a few games on there. But I also really loved collecting for the 3DS, which is why I accumulated so many titles before the eShop closed. But honestly, I love collecting for all the systems that I currently own games for. So the 3DS, the DS, the PS4, PS5, the Switch, the PSP, the PS Vita, and the Game Boy games. I think they're all fun to collect for. There are other systems that I would like to maybe add to this at some point, but I'm pretty content with just focusing on the consoles I have right now, and maybe the next Nintendo's console will be the next one I'll add to the shelves here. And then the second part of the question about buying up current games available when there's a new console that is being rumored. So kind of what's currently happening with the Switch 2 and the Switch. I would say that if there's a new game that I'm interested in for the Switch, or some older titles that I see reduced, I definitely would want to pick it up, especially if it was already on my wish list. So that's not going to really change. I do kind of question whether or not there's going to be some remasters happening. So sort of what we've seen Sony do with the PS4 and PS5, they've made some exclusive PS5 versions that you can't just put your PS4 disc in and automatically get those improvements. So I'm wondering if Nintendo's going to do something similar with some of the Switch titles here. So that might make me a little bit hesitant to kind of jump into a buying frenzy, if you will. But yeah, I would say for the most part, my buying behaviors is probably not going to change. Because I'm on my low buy right now, I'm probably just going to wait for more deeper discounts and maybe go a little FOMO on some of the time sensitive games, like for example Limited Run's doing Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush in limited quantities during their pre-order period. So I'm going to be buying those naturally to not miss out on them, because those are games I've been wanting for my collection. So in short, I don't think my buying behavior is going to change too much right now. I think a lot of the Switch games are going to be available for a long time, even after the Switch 2 releases. Sort of what we've seen with the PS4 games currently. And I think it's also good to just be conscious that maybe an improved version of an older system game might come out for the new system. So there's no need to kind of rush out and buy all the Switch titles right now with fear of them going out of print or something, at least in my opinion. All right, now for some non-gaming related questions. I was a little surprised I didn't get too many this time. But Tony P9313 asked, have you been to Canada? If so, what city and province? So I've only been to Vancouver and it was a very short stint. I was there, was it? I think in 6th grade, maybe the summer before middle school. And that was because my family organized some sort of Alaskan cruise. So Vancouver was the port that we left from. And I was also technically in Canada, I think when I was around 1 year old, when my parents decided to do this big long road trip. Why my parents decided to do that with an infant, I'm not too sure, but yeah, I definitely have no recollection of that at all. But that said, I would love to visit Canada and see some of the other cities. Definitely haven't been to like Montreal on the east side or Ontario, which is kind of funny because I guess work related, I did some kind of data stuff with the province of Ontario for a study. That was cool. So it'd be cool to visit there after interacting with that study for a while. All right, so I'm gonna switch to some Twitter questions now. First with Alex from Quality Individual here on YouTube. Asked, what is one video game OST that you could never get tired of listening to? This is difficult. Definitely the two franchises I listen to the most are Xenoblade and Trails. A lot of my background music is Trails music, as many of you picked up on. So I guess the safe answer is Trails because that's what I use in my videos and I always love those songs. But my favorite OST of all time is still Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Just chef's kiss all around. I love that OST so much and how much variety there is in there. And then Enemy Zero Studio, who's also here on YouTube, asked, what are some non-JRPG franchises you really enjoy? So I touched on this a little bit, but I definitely love the 3D platformers that were on the PS2 era. So the Jak and Daxter games and Ratchet and Clank. I love all of these Supergiant games too, though a lot of their games are kind of RPG adjacent, but Hades, it was my first roguelite game and I loved it so much and it's still one of my favorites of all time. I love visual novels as well and it's something that I collect for right after JRPGs, and so I've accumulated quite a few of them. I think because of my reading hobby, I haven't gone through as many as I would like, but some favorites are AI the Somnian Files. I think those are great. I definitely need to get to 999 sometime soon. When it comes to some of the romance or the otome visual novels, I really love Collar X Malice, and again, I have so many other otome VNs I want to get to, but I haven't made the time for them, unfortunately, but I'm hoping to improve on that sometime this year. And I also just love action adventure games, so there's Zelda, of course, even though some people argue some of that has RPG elements, which it does, but I wouldn't classify it as a JRPG, of course. And then Mila from Mila's Gaming Room asked if you could wave a magic wand and localize an import exclusive game into English officially, which would it be? I'm trying to think of which games haven't been localized yet. Off the top of my head that I've been thinking about recently, I think Valkyria Chronicles 3 definitely needs to have an official localization and physical, especially after hearing that that's one of the best games in the franchise. There's also a Trails vs. Ys game that I'd love to see localized too, even though that's, I think, more of a fighting game. And I'm in no way someone who plays fighting games, but I would buy a Trails vs. Ys fighting game. And there's, of course, some early Fire Emblem games that haven't been localized that ideally I'd like to see remasters of, like Genesis of the Holy War is rumored to be getting remastered sometime soon. I'm sure there's a ton of other JRPGs and VNs in particular I'd love to see localized. But yeah, I try not to look too deeply into what games haven't been localized yet. Mostly because I just have so many games that have been localized I haven't gotten to yet, and I just don't want to be disappointed knowing about a game that I'll likely never experience because of a pretty large barrier to entry for me. And then Luis Ortega asked, would you ever do any Let's Plays? Maybe a rare video of game hunting out in the wild as opposed to online purchases. And I actually bought a vlogging camera for the purpose of maybe doing some spontaneous video game hunting, even though honestly my area is not very good for video game hunting. I would have to drive at least 50 miles away for something halfway decent, possibly. Even then, I think maybe 100 miles, where there's probably a lot of better options here in California. There was another question I remember someone asking about maybe video game conventions I would attend. I do want to attend maybe one video game convention this year. I'm not sure which one still. and whether that is something I could squeeze in or not, depending on when it's happening. But yeah, I think it'd be fun to do one of those videos just at least once. When it comes to Let's Plays, I mentioned how I might try to do some streaming, and that's still on the table. I just don't know when that's going to happen. Most because I don't think I would be a very good entertainer. Just watch me play a video game. Video games have always been something that I've used to kind of wind down with and I guess hyper focus on, so I don't have to have all these other worries or other anxieties just clouding my thoughts. So again, I don't think I would be very entertaining to just watch me play them. And there's also a lot of JRPGs that don't have voice acting, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't really like reading out loud. I was always that kid who hated being called on to read like a page or two out loud for the class. That was something that just gave me so much anxiety when that started happening in grade school, and has kind of stayed with me for a long time. And that's also partly why I don't script my videos, because just the idea of reading that out loud also kind of gives me anxiety, and I just feel like it wouldn't be very entertaining. It's something I'm willing to try if you guys are interested. It's something that might take me a while to bring up the courage for, but it's not completely off the table. And then Jay from Cold Nights Gaming asked if you could pick one game series to get a reboot, which would you like to see? There's so many games I'd love to see reboots for. I kind of mentioned a few already, but to mention one that I haven't already, I think ideally I'd like it for games that I have no means of playing right now because I don't own those consoles, or they're just extremely expensive. To kind of go off of an earlier answer, I think Skies of Arcadia would be really cool to see remastered. I know there are some rumors about it, but I don't know how true those are, but definitely we need more Sky Pirates in JRPGs. Another Fire Emblem game I'd love to see rebooted is Path of Radiance, because that's stupidly expensive right now, and I don't really have plans to buy GameCube anytime soon. That's because I feel like it's impossible to collect the games I'm interested in on that system right now. And I also don't have any nostalgia for that system. I had some friends who owned one back in the day, but I never really watched them play it much or talk about it at all. I feel like it's probably their siblings who played on it more than they did. But I was always intrigued by a lot of games on there. And I know some of them have had reboots, like Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. And I have a feeling those will come back too on the next Nintendo system or on the Switch, maybe. So the next one is from Celso O'Donnell, and they ask, one of the things I enjoy most about your content is how conscientious about budgeting you are. Want to ask who taught you this? Also on a different note, what's the most industry praised game or game series you have never played? I guess I was raised, very frugally as a kid. Again, I think I touched on this with how my brother and I acquired games back in the day. And our parents were pretty good at not spoiling us. And this could be a positive or negative, but my first job wasn't until grad school as a teaching assistant. So prior to that, I really didn't feel comfortable spending my parents' money on things. So I try to limit that as much as possible. And I think that's also what contributed to me to focusing so much on school, because that was, my job at the time that I wanted to be serious about, and helped me graduate a year early with my bachelor's degree so I can move on to grad school. And I was about to actually take out loans for that, but fortunately I was able to go to a PhD program right away where they would fund it with stipends and having me work alongside my degree program. So this is something I also touched on within grad school. I wanted to just build up an emergency fund just so that I wouldn't have to fall back and rely on my parents so much because they've already provided so much for me. But yeah, I didn't actually utilize a zero-based budget, which is what I do now, where I track all my expenses and know exactly where every dollar is going until much later. It's honestly only a couple years ago I started. So, but before that, yeah, I was just motivated to save a lot of money and not spend too much on hobbies or other things that were unnecessary. And then industry most praised game that I haven't played yet. Some things that come to mind, are the Nier games. I haven't played Nier Automata yet, which I want to sometime. What else? I still haven't played God of War 2018 yet, but I need to. And then also on my shelf right here, I haven't played the Mass Effect games yet, or Shadow of the Colossus or The Last Guardian, which were highly praised. So yeah, there's plenty of JRPGs and other types of games I haven't experienced yet, but will hopefully at some point. And then Scorpio Caesar here on YouTube asked, is there a certain genre of games, excluding sports, that you don't enjoy? If so, which is it and why? I think I answered this on a previous Q&A, but I don't like party games at all. That includes Mario Kart, Mario Party, all those. Like, I've played them a few times and sometimes they're fun, but I've always just enjoyed solo gaming. Like I mentioned, I like gaming to just unwind and relax, or again, hyperfixate on something. And when you invite other people into that space, I don't know, I just feel more conscientious and I just don't have as much fun. And then earlier I also mentioned I don't enjoy fighting games, and that's, I think, on a similar note. I think those are probably more fun or best enjoyed with another person. But when it comes to other solo type of games, I don't enjoy games that involve a lot of chase scenes, and I also don't enjoy a lot of card-based games. There are a few exceptions to that. For example, with the Cold Steel 3 replay I'm doing right now, I'm enjoying Vantage Masters a lot more than I remembered. But yeah, I don't usually enjoy card games much. Then Zoo from Flipping the Switch asked, what genre is the most underrepresented in your backlog, and why do you think that is? So by underrepresented, that means I have the fewest of those games in my backlog, and I would say a lot of just the pure Nintendo games, like the Mario games and things, I guess are underrepresented. I guess this question could be taken two ways. Underrepresented in that I've beaten most of those types of games, so they're not in my backlog anymore, but in this context, they're underrepresented because I don't usually buy a lot of these games and I don't usually play through them too frequently. So I have a few different Mario games I picked up on the 3DS to just try. So far I've really just done 3D Land. I've done Odyssey on the Switch, as well as Luigi's Mansion 3, which I don't own. I borrowed from my brother a while back. But yeah, I feel weird saying that I'm a Nintendo fan because clearly I collect for a lot of their systems, but my focus has never been on their biggest IP, Mario. So I feel like that's a little bit weird. Even though I was exposed to Mario early on, I had the Super Mario Bros. Deluxe on the Game Boy Color that I played a lot of when I was a child. But yeah, for some reason I just haven't really gone back into the Mario world yet. Maybe one of these days I'll finally catch that bug, but I just been enjoying so many of the other games in my collection that I just been kind of overlooking them a bit. And then Paige from FemTrooper asked, what JRPG series have you never tried that you want to or plan on trying soon? I feel a little bad because last year I made it a goal of mine to play at least one Tales of game, which I failed at because I had a few in my collection that I was ready to play, but I just never got around to it. So that's definitely a series that I do want to try. Probably I'm thinking with the 3DS Tales of Abyss version first, because I've just heard so much praise for that game. But when I'm going to be fitting that in, I'm not sure. Because my schedule's a little bit packed, at least for this first half of the year. And then Agent Cooper 1998 asked, do you have a favorite Western RPG game or series? Definitely my favorite Western RPG right now is The Witcher 3. I was obsessed with that game. So far I've only played the Switch version, but I definitely want to get it on the PS5 and maybe replay it, though I need to stop replaying games. I've been doing that with Trials lately, and I need to actually play more of my backlog of games I haven't played yet. But so far I've only played the one entry, and I'm looking forward to the remasters of the other Witcher games. Then Wolf Phoenix asked, as an avid physical collector, do you ever buy digital games instead? What kinds of games have you purchased digitally? So I mentioned how I purchased Animal Crossing New Horizons digitally on the Switch during the pandemic when I didn't know better, and also extenuating circumstances, of course, with the pandemic happening. And I've also purchased a few of the Final Fantasy games digitally before the physicals were announced. So I have Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 digitally on my Switch. I also have a lot of the Supergiant games that I own digitally on the Switch as well, that I think I got just heavily discounted, even though now I own those physically, all except for Pyra. And then I also bought Xenoblade Chronicles 3 Future Redeemed digitally as well. That's technically DLC, though I consider it its own game. And that was because that's the only way to buy it right now, because Nintendo was foolish and didn't print those out physically, which is such a misstep because that game is amazing. And then Emmanuel asks, as you reflect on your path to 30K, what has been the most unexpected joy or aspect you've liked the most? And conversely, what unexpected aspect have you disliked the most? The unexpected joy is definitely how many connections I've made with different content creators. I honestly didn't think I would be able to reach a lot of people just this late in the game when it comes to making videos about game collecting. I thought for sure I would just be some nobody kind of speaking out into the abyss about my passion for collecting games. So that has been a very big surprise for me and a great joy. And then aspects I've not enjoyed as much. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what would be unexpected because, like, of course, no one likes troll comments or just mean comments in general. So I was definitely expecting that. Maybe not to the scale that I've been getting. That was a surprise for me, but yeah. I guess it's not too unexpected, just given the video game space, unfortunately. But the other unexpected thing I've disliked, I guess it's been the guilt of when I can't upload as regularly as I would like. I feel really bad, like I'm letting you guys down or letting myself down for not producing just high quality videos on a consistent basis. Because I always just expected YouTube to be more of a personal thing that I would just upload and kind of maybe work more on myself and maybe connect with some individuals. So I think the unexpected thing of just experiencing so much growth in a short amount of time was the amount of community I feel, and I don't want to really let the community down by underperforming, if you will. So I guess that will be my answer for that. And then BK1889 asks, I know this started out as a hobby sort of thing. Do you see yourself doing more in regards to gaming content? I guess, could you see yourself being more involved in the gaming space than you currently are? Honestly, probably not. I mentioned how I might want to venture into Let's Plays or even some live streaming, but that's not going to be, I think, the focus I want to do because I started this channel just to kind of document and express my game collecting journey and kind of just share this passion with everyone. And I think that's difficult to translate that into other types of content. But in terms of maybe making this more of a career in this industry, with all the amount of years of schooling I've put myself through and my postdoc, I really can't see myself abandon my current career path. And it's just so hard to be a content creator and make that a full-time job without, resorting to so many different tactics to stay relevant. And it's just a very high stress job that I just can't see myself committing to, especially not in the long term, because it's definitely less of a stable job than my current career path. All right, so I feel like I've been talking about myself for way too long and just rambling, so I'm just going to go for one more question. If you guys, again, would like a part 2 to answer the rest of the questions, let me know. But I'm going to answer Miguel Gomez Velez's question. And what is your favorite saga from One Piece? From the earlier arcs, I was always drawn to the Alabasta arc. That's when we were first introduced to Robin as Miss All Sunday. And the more recent arcs, I've definitely loved the Wano arc. I thought that one was done very well, especially in the anime, where there's a little less filler. And I guess before that, I also did enjoy the Thriller Bark arc as well, because that was just a little bit different, and it was fun. But again, I'd like to thank everyone who submitted questions, and again, I'll be up for part 2 if you guys are interested in, because there are a ton of questions that I didn't get to answer. A few of them had some overlapping ideas with some of the questions I did answer, so hopefully the answers I did give for those questions kind of helped give you an idea for how I would answer some of the other questions I couldn't get to. But this was fun. I hope you guys enjoyed this and got to learn a little bit more about me, some of my gaming tastes and past history, as well as a little bit about my interest in One Piece. And I guess until my next video, bye guys.